Chapter 1783. The ancient pagoda was completely black and shrouded in black mist. Although it was only the size of a palm, its power was astonishing. Seeing the ancient pagoda, Qin Feiyang's eyes were filled with surprise. Because this ancient pagoda was almost exactly the same as the divine prison in the back mountain of the imperial palace. Yes, as you think, this is the divine prison. But you definitely didn't expect that the divine prison is a divine artifact, Qin Sheng said. The divine prison is a divine artifact, Qin Feiyang murmured. In the past, old Qin and second grandpa had told him that the imperial palace was not as simple as it seemed. In the end, it was true. Follow me to revive the divine prison, Qin Sheng shouted. The other two old men nodded. The power of the false gods poured into the divine prison, and the aura emitted by the divine prison became more and more terrifying. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, "You are only false gods. If you revive the divine artifact without thinking of the consequences, it will not do you any good. It doesn't matter. Even if we suffer the backlash of the divine artifact, we will fight to the end," Qin Sheng said. "For the sake of righteousness, you are willing to sacrifice yourself. Truly admirable. I take back what I said before. You are worthy of being the pillars of my great Qin. However, I will not allow anyone to stand in front of me. To show my respect for you, I will use 1/10 of my strength to end this battle," Qin Feiyang said. "What? Is this kid talking nonsense? Using 1/10 of his strength? Doesn't that mean that the strength he showed before is not even 1/10? Second grandpa and the others were stunned. When the three of them heard this, they couldn't help but be furious. 1/10. Wasn't this humiliating them? But in this regard, Lu Zheng, Zhuge Mingyang, the state preceptor, and Emperor Hong did not refute. Because this was the truth. Although the Fire Phoenix art, the Void Returning art, and the Guiyuan sword art had all appeared in succession, it had to be known that Qin Feiyang's strongest divine arts were not these few. Looking at their reactions, Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, "I didn't mean to humiliate you at all. On the contrary, the fact that you can make me use 1/10 of my strength is enough to prove your position in my heart." However, the three of them did not think so. They were reviving the god's prison, without any regard for their lives. The emperor glanced at Qin Feiyang and the other two. He stared coldly at Qin Feiyang and said, "You are still the same as before. You haven't changed at all. You look down on everyone and think that you are the best in the world." Qin Feiyang said indifferently, "The one who has the least right to speak here is you. Qualifications? You dare to talk about qualifications with me?" The emperor seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world. Clang! Right at this moment, a deafening sound came from the divine prison. Qin Sheng and the other two were trembling, and their faces were extremely pale. It was obvious that they had reached their limits. Qin Feiyang, prepare to face our wrath. The three of them looked at each other and roared. The divine prison shook the sky and aggressively blasted toward Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang glanced at the emperor, then turned his gaze and locked onto the divine prison. Boom! All of a sudden, a divine seal appeared in the void in front of him without any warning. That's right. It was the divine dragon seal. The divine dragon technique, which had evolved into a perfect divine technique, no longer needed to make seals. It could be evolved with just a thought. A perfect divine technique. This bastard is really infuriating. Zhuge Mingyang clenched his fingers and was extremely unhappy. How could this person be more outstanding than him? He should be the #1 genius of the great Qin dynasty. What Qin Feiyang? What Lu Jiajin? What qualifications did they have to be above Zhuge Mingyang? Boom! The divine dragon seal and the divine prison shook the sky and collided. In an instant, a dazzling divine light bloomed in this place. Those Kirin army and Marquis who had fled far away couldn't help but close their eyes. At the same time, a wave of qi that could destroy the world surged out in all directions like a tidal wave. Feeling the aura emitted by the airwave, the law enforcers couldn't help but be frightened, even though they were protected by the national master and the other two. Clang! In the void, the divine prison and the divine dragon seal were in a stalemate. But just when Qin Sheng and the other two thought that they could compete with Qin Feiyang, The aura of the divine dragon seal suddenly soared. Now the divine dragon seal exerted its full power. The divine prison was immediately blasted away. Qin Sheng and the other two vomited blood, and their eyes were full of horror. Even the awakened divine artifact couldn't resist the divine dragon seal? This is too terrifying. The divine prison crashed into the distant mountains, and the surrounding tens of thousands of miles were directly razed to the ground. But the divine dragon seal was still there. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the divine dragon seal whizzed toward Qin Sheng, and the other two, and the emperor. Qin Sheng shouted, "Your Majesty, run!" The other two old men also stood in front of the emperor, and stared at the divine dragon seal, their faces full of anxiety. "I'm the emperor of a country. How can I run away?" Even though his life was at stake, the emperor's expression didn't change. Qin Sheng said angrily, "Your Majesty, is face more important than life?" The emperor turned a deaf ear. Qin Sheng was burning with anxiety. Suddenly, he turned his head and stared at Qin Feiyang with a hint of madness in his old eyes. "Qin Feiyang, if you insist on killing the emperor, then this old man can only perish together with you." Qin Sheng shouted and flew toward the divine dragon seal without looking back. The two old men were shocked and angry. "Qin Sheng, what are you doing? Death is as light as a feather and as heavy as Mount Tai. For the great Qin dynasty, I will die a worthy death," Qin Sheng said, and a destructive aura suddenly rushed out of his body. "This is self-explosion." The two old men's eyes trembled. "Take His Majesty away," Qin Sheng roared. The two men's eyes couldn't help but moisten. They resolutely turned around and carried the emperor away. Looking at the emperor leaving, Qin Sheng chuckled. He turned his head to look at Qin Feiyang and said, "This old man once thought of 10,000 ways to die, but I never thought that in the end, I would die together with you." Qin Feiyang remained silent, but he didn't stop either. His eyes were filled with endless indifference. However, if one looked carefully, they would find that he was secretly paying attention to Zhuge Mingyang and the other two. In fact, he was forcing Zhuge Mingyang and the other two to make a move. But he also knew that the possibility of Zhuge Mingyang and the state preceptor making a move was extremely small, because the two originally planned to usurp the throne. If Qin Sheng and the other two died here, it would be a good thing for them. Therefore, his main target was the Han Emperor. The Han Emperor was the son of the previous emperor and the emperor's grandfather. He didn't believe that this old man would be indifferent. In the blink of an eye, the divine dragon seal had arrived in front of Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng's self-destruction was about to become a foregone conclusion. But at this moment, the Han Emperor suddenly teleported and rushed towards Qin Sheng. At the same time, the inner demon's Han Emperor also appeared out of thin air and immediately rushed towards Qin Feiyang. His eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty light. The distance between the two was not far. In addition, the inner demon's Han Emperor used teleportation. Almost in an instant, he rushed behind Qin Feiyang. Immediately, he slapped towards Qin Feiyang's back, his palm gushing with divine power. Obviously, he wanted to destroy Qin Feiyang's sea of qi in one fell swoop. "Finally made a move? I didn't wait in vain," Qin Feiyang muttered in his heart. However, he didn't dodge, nor did he counterattack. Boom! The inner demon's Han Emperor's palm fell. Qin Feiyang flew out like a meteorite on the spot, smashing into the ground outside the village. A huge pit suddenly appeared. Dust and smoke covered the sky. At the same time, the Han Emperor himself also rushed to Qin Sheng's side. His arm explosively stretched out and pressed on Qin Sheng's shoulder. Qin Sheng's self-destruction was forcibly cut off. "Lord Han Emperor." Qin Sheng looked at him in a daze. The Han Emperor ignored him and turned to slap the divine dragon seal. The divine dragon seal was also shattered. Although the divine dragon seal was a perfect divine art, because Qin Feiyang suppressed his cultivation, its power did not reach its true peak. Because of this, the Han Emperor could defeat it with one palm. All of this was said to be slow, but the whole process happened in an instant. Not only the state preceptor and Zhuge Mingyang, but also Lu Zheng and second grandpa, and the others were also surprised. They all fell into a state of absent-mindedness. After a short while, the state preceptor and Zhuge Mingyang were the first to recover. and immediately raised their eyebrows without leaving a trace. It seemed that they were very dissatisfied with the Han Emperor's move. This damned old thing, can't he be idle? You want to run over and get involved? Lu Zheng also recovered, his eyes full of anger. Second Grandpa sighed and said, "After all, the Han Emperor is a person of the great Qin. It's normal for him to make a move." Lu Zheng raised his eyebrows, looked at Second Grandpa and the other two, and asked suspiciously, "Why aren't you surprised at all? There are two Han Emperors. What's there to be surprised about? We already knew that he had inner demons." Second Grandpa said, "You already knew?" Lu Zheng was slightly stunned, and said with a pout, "You all really hide your strength." Third Grandpa said in a deep voice, "Compared to this, Fei Yang's situation is the most important." That's right. Inner demons Han Emperor can also exert the strength of a war god, and Fei Yang is only a false god. Facing his sneak attack, I'm afraid. Fourth Grandpa murmured, his face full of worry. Lu Zheng sneered secretly. So what if it was a sneak attack? One had to know that Qin Fei Yang's body was also a real war god's body. Although he suppressed his cultivation, the strength of his body did not change at all. Moreover, Qin Fei Yang, who had once eaten divine flesh, had a body that was even more tenacious and strong than the other war gods. So, inner demons Han Emperor's sneak attack could not shatter Qin Fei Yang's qi at all. Of course, if inner demons Han Emperor used a divine weapon or a divine art, it would be a different story. After all, no matter how strong the body was, it would be difficult to block the sharpness of the divine weapon. However, just now, inner demons Han Emperor did not use these methods, so Lu Zheng was not worried at all. But the others did not know that Qin Fei Yang had already stepped into the war god. Everyone thought inner demons Han Emperor's attack was enough to kill him. Even if he was lucky and did not die, he would definitely be seriously injured. Even Zhuge Mingyang and the state preceptor thought so. However, in Lu Zheng's heart, there was also a doubt. Logically speaking, with Qin Fei Yang's cautious personality, it was impossible for him not to notice the inner demons Han Emperor's sneak attack. But why did the inner demons Han Emperor's sneak attack succeed? Could it be this little cousin was distracted? How could there be two Emperor Hong? What's going on? Although Second Grandpa and the others knew that Emperor Hong had inner demons, there were still many people present who did not know about this matter. Because the inner demons had always been Emperor Hong's secret and his biggest trump card. Other than a few people, no one else knew about it. However, at this moment, those who knew about it did not have the mood to explain. They all lowered their heads and stared at the place where Qin Fei Yang fell. Chapter 1784. Billowing dust and smoke enveloped several miles of land. There was dead silence in the dust and smoke. And they couldn't sense Qin Fei Yang's aura either. Why hasn't he come out yet? Could he have died? Everyone was bewildered. Zhuge Mingyang's eyes flashed. He released his divine thought and rushed down. Everything was clear in his eyes. Immediately, a smile appeared on his face. Within the dust cloud, Qin Fei Yang was lying in a pit. His entire body was dripping with blood, and there was no sign of life on his body. Obviously, his sea of qi had been destroyed. Woo-woo. Following that, Zhuge Mingyang waved his hand. A gust of wind suddenly blew, and the dust quickly dissipated. Qin Fei Yang appeared. How could this be? Looking at Qin Fei Yang's current situation, Lu Zheng was dumbfounded. How could the mighty body of the war god be crippled so easily? What was this guy doing? Zhuge Mingyang stepped on the edge of the pit and looked down at Qin Fei Yang. He chuckled and said, "How does it feel to have your sea of qi destroyed by your great-grandfather?" "It feels good." Qin Fei Yang grinned. Blood kept flowing out of his mouth. He got up in a sorry state. "Did I ask you to stand up?" But before he could stabilize his body, Zhuge Mingyang's eyes flashed fiercely. His aura surged and oppressed him. Bang! Qin Fei Yang fell into a pool of blood again. "Are you desperate? Do you want to kill me? But do you have the ability to?" Zhuge Mingyang's face was full of ridicule. "I was too impulsive. I should have waited for old man Qin and the others to come." Qin Fei Yang didn't pay attention to him and sighed to himself. "Don't be naive. Even if old man Qin and the others come, you will still die." Zhuge Mingyang sneered. "Is that so?" Qin Fei Yang looked at him coldly. Zhuge Mingyang said. Now answer me. How did you enter the imperial capital? Spacetime gate. Qin Feiyang said. What? The spacetime gate is in your hands. Zhuge Mingyang was bewildered. You're thinking too much. The gate of time and space has always been in the hands of the snow python. My gate of time and space is just a replica, Qin Feiyang said. So it's the spacetime gate that you snatched from Mu Qing. You really scared me. Zhuge Mingyang laughed. As long as he understood this point, he didn't have to worry about anything else. This was because even if Old Man Qin and the others defeated Mu Tianyang, they wouldn't be able to rush back to the imperial capital to help. That was to say, Qin Feiyang was now all alone. Whoosh! The imperial preceptor teleported and landed beside Zhuge Mingyang. He said in a low voice, Mingyang, he has Xuesong's help. Take advantage of this opportunity to quickly get rid of him. No hurry. He's just a pseudo-god. Even if he recovers his Sea of Qi, what can he do? Zhuge Mingyang said disdainfully. But just as he was about to fight back, a figure flashed through the air like lightning and landed in front of him. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and immediately looked up. When he saw the back of the figure, his eyes suddenly trembled. How could it be him? Why did this person save him? Qin Feiyang's head was buzzing, and his face was full of disbelief. At the same time, Zhuge Mingyang and the state preceptor were also stunned. But then, their eyes were filled with ferocious light. Whoosh! The grayish-white divine power was like an indestructible arrow as it entered the sea of energy of the person in front of Qin Feiyang. The Qi vessel was shattered. A bloody hole the size of a fist appeared, and blood was flowing out. However, the person did not move like a mountain, protecting Qin Feiyang. Why? Why is it him? Lu Zheng was also in disbelief. Moreover, in the distance the Kirin army, Wu Hou, and the law enforcers, as well as the three of them, all looked at the person in shock. What the hell was going on? Didn't he hate Qin Feiyang? Didn't he fight to the death just now? Why did he step forward at this moment, stand in front of Qin Feiyang, and protect him even at the cost of his life? What are you doing? Zhuge Mingyang looked at the person with a gloomy face and shouted, Back off. The person shook his head. You're courting death. Zhuge Mingyang was furious and raised his hand to hit the person's head. Alas! However, at this moment, with a long sigh, another figure appeared in front of Qin Feiyang and grabbed Zhuge Mingyang's wrist. Zhuge Mingyang's eyes were full of killing intent. Why? Why on earth? In the past you tried to kill me, but now you're standing in front of me to protect me, Qin Feiyang murmured. Looking at the two figures in front of him, he really could not believe it, because he had never thought or hoped that there would be a day when he would be protected by these two people. Grandpas, can you tell me why this is? Lu Zheng retracted his gaze and turned to look at second grandpa and the other two, but the three of them ignored him and looked at the two people in front of Qin Feiyang with complicated eyes. The scene fell into a dead silence, and the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Why on earth is this? Hurry up and tell me. Qin Feiyang suddenly roared, breaking the silence. Because the people in front of him, protecting him, were Emperor Hong and the Emperor. Emperor Hong grabbed Zhuge Mingyang's arm and asked without turning his head, Do you really want to know the truth? I want to know even in my dreams. Qin Feiyang nodded. Emperor Hong said, Then are you mentally prepared? Qin Feiyang said word by word. I was already prepared when I was in Iron Ox Town. Very good. Emperor Hong nodded his head and smiled, then looked at Zhuge Mingyang and said, Now that the demon ancestor's divine body has escaped, whether it is me, the Emperor, or Qin Feiyang, we should all be the targets you want to eliminate. Zhuge Mingyang's arm shook, shaking off Emperor Hong's big hand. Then, he rubbed his aching wrist and smiled. You've already thought of this, as expected of the son of the Qin Emperor. That's right. Once we get rid of the Lu family, none of you descendants of Qin Batian will be able to live. Great Qin will belong to my Zhuge family. And my ancestor, who is also the current imperial preceptor, will become the first imperial emperor of my Zhuge empire. Zhuge Mingyang laughed. The imperial preceptor's expression changed and he shouted, Mingyang! Ancestor, at this point, do you still have anything to worry about? Qin Feiyang's cultivation has been crippled, a mere Emperor Hong. Even if the Lu family's fourth grandpa is added, what can they do to us? I alone am enough to take care of them. Zhuge Mingyang's face was full of contempt. The imperial preceptor pondered for a moment, then smiled and nodded. That's true. What Qin Feiyang said is true. The imperial preceptor wants to usurp the throne. The three of them trembled both physically and mentally. They never thought that the imperial preceptor they had always respected would have such wild ambitions. Swish! The three of them hurriedly rushed to Emperor Hong's side. While protecting Qin Feiyang, they glared at the imperial preceptor and Zhuge Mingyang. You three ants dare to stand in front of me? Zhuge Mingyang's eyes flashed with killing intent. 3 strands of divine power swept out, directly shattering the three people's sea of qi. Zhuge Mingyang, what are you doing? Usurping the throne is a great crime, do you know that? The Marquis and Kirin army in the distance roared angrily. As early as when the little prince inherited the throne, Qin Feiyang had already destroyed my Zhuge family. What is there to be afraid of? Zhuge Mingyang laughed angrily. You deserve it. Someone roared. Deserve it. From ancient times until now, the world has always been occupied by the capable. My Zhuge family is glorious, and has replaced the Qin clan to control the world. What's wrong with that? Zhuge Mingyang shouted. Genius remembered the address of this site in a second. Mobile version of reading website, M. The imperial advisor glanced at Zhuge Mingyang, then coldly looked at Emperor Hong and said, Are you trying to sow discord? This is already the truth in front of us. Is there a need to sow discord? You just don't want to admit it. After all, he was nurtured by you. You have high hopes for him. Emperor Hong said. The imperial preceptor clenched his fists. You talk too much. Are you going to say it or not? If you don't, I'll send you on your way. Zhuge Mingyang said impatiently. Emperor Hong took a deep breath, turned to look at Qin Feiyang, and sighed. This matter, we have to start from when the demon ancestor was sealed. Qin Feiyang said. I already know about the demon ancestor being sealed. There's no need to say any more. Emperor Hong glanced at him and said, Then let's talk about it after the seal. After the demon ancestor was sealed, the demon dragon once again set off a reign of terror. In the end, he was also killed by Father. The demon ancestor and the demon dragon were killed one after another, and the Great Qin Empire was established. This continent finally slowly calmed down. My Great Qin also walked towards glory step by step. But just before your father succeeded the throne, Zhuge Xunyan suddenly entered the imperial palace, found us, and directly revealed his identity. At that time, we were very surprised and prepared to take him down immediately. But at that moment, the demon ancestor's divine sense appeared. At that time, we wanted to capture both Zhuge Xunyan and the demon ancestor's divine sense in one fell swoop. Because at that time, the demon ancestor had not fully recovered his divine sense. However, what we didn't expect was that although the demon ancestor and the demon dragon were killed back then, the demon ancestor still had a group of powerful subordinates. There were even divine beasts. Emperor Hong said. So you compromised? Qin Feiyang asked. Zhuge Xunyan was the imperial preceptor. That's right. We had to compromise. Otherwise, the Great Qin would have been finished long ago. Emperor Hong sighed. Since the demon ancestor still had such terrifying subordinates, why didn't he just kill you directly? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Because of the seal. If he wants to take back the divine body, he must have the people of the Qin clan to remove the seal. Emperor Hong said. I see. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization. But at that time, although there were countless descendants of the Great Qin, no one could achieve ancestral awakening. And Father, there was no news, so the demon ancestor could only wait. So he let Zhuge Xunyan, as the imperial preceptor, lurk in the imperial palace and monitor the descendants of the Qin clan. Until one day, when Emperor Hong said until here, his expression became agitated all at once. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Emperor Hong looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Your birth. My birth? Qin Feiyang frowned. Yes. After crippling your cultivation, he hardened his heart and immediately expelled you from the imperial capital. Because he knew that the ancestor devil would not give up just by crippling your cultivation. Because the marrow cleansing pill is not that rare. So he expelled you to the spiritual state. And he also ordered the spiritual state's mansion master at that time, Old Master Ren, not to let anyone give you the marrow cleansing pill. And not to let anyone know that you are in the spiritual state. Emperor Hong said. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled and said, Old Master Ren also knows my identity? That's right. Not only him. The previous mansion master Zhu Yu also knows your identity. Emperor Hong said. So I was the only one who was kept in the dark. Qin Feiyang laughed self-deprecatingly and said, Now that you mention it, Ma Hongmei of the Iron Ox Town was also ordered by you to deliberately not give me the marrow cleansing pill. That's right. But she didn't know your identity. Only Old Master Ren, and Zhu Yu in the spiritual state knew. She was just following orders. Emperor Hong said. Following orders? But do you know? I treated her as an enemy, and I killed her with my own hands. Qin Feiyang roared. We know about her death. But you don't have to feel guilty about her death. Because Old Master Ren has been secretly paying attention to you, and everyone in the Iron Ox Town. This person is narrow-minded. Back then, she bribed the people of the Black Demon Stronghold to kill you. And in her opinion, since the higher-ups ordered not to give you the marrow cleansing pill, then you must be the enemy of the Pill Pagoda. So she didn't put you in her eyes. Emperor Hong said. Has been secretly paying attention to me. Qin Feiyang murmured. Yes. Now do you understand? Your father did this to protect you. Emperor Hong sighed. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled and looked at the emperor again. The hatred in his heart suddenly disappeared and was replaced by guilt and self-blame. Everything his father did was to protect him. But what about him? He treated his father as a life and death enemy. He even repeatedly humiliated his father in front of everyone. The more he thought about it, the more he hated himself. Why was he so stupid? Slap. Suddenly, he slapped himself hard on the face and roared. Unfaithful and unfilial, you are even worse than a beast. He was scolding himself. Tian'er. The emperor turned his head to look at him, tears already streaming down his face. The indifference of the past also disappeared. The long-lost doting kindness and fatherly love appeared. Plop. Looking at the emperor's eyes and face at this moment, Qin Feiyang's heart trembled and directly knelt on the ground, saying, Father, I'm sorry, I'm insensible, I deserve to die, hit me, scold me. No. I've never blamed you. I only blame myself. Why am I so incompetent that I can't even protect my own child? Qin Feiyang looked at Emperor Hong and said, Since you are so afraid of the devil ancestor, then why are you still desperately helping Zhuge Mingyang and the imperial preceptor snatch the devil ancestor's divine body in the divine ruins? The fiend ancestor is threatening me with the lives of so many people. Do I dare not do it? However, later on, I also decided to cut off all means of retreat. Emperor Hong said. Burn all bridges? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. After Zhuge Mingyang took back the divine body, I wanted to find a chance to destroy the demon alpha's divine body. I was also afraid that my strength wasn't enough, so I asked you for the heavenly great sword. But Zhuge Mingyang seemed to have sensed my thoughts, and kept the demon ancestor's divine body in another space, inside the spatial divine object. I couldn't find a chance at all. Emperor Hong said regretfully. Sure enough, there's more than one space. Qin Feiyang muttered. When he heard Zhao Tailai's words, he suspected that the spatial divine object was the same as Mu Tianyang's spatial divine object. There was more than one space. What about Mother? Qin Feiyang looked at the emperor and asked. The emperor sighed. Your mother is the person I owe the most in my life. Qin Feiyang asked. You abolished her position as empress and imprisoned her. It should be the imperial preceptor's idea, right? No. This matter has nothing to do with the imperial preceptor. It was my idea. The emperor shook his head. Your idea? Qin Feiyang frowned. Yes. Although your mother is gentle and kind in front of you, her temper is actually the same as yours. Back then, after you were banished to the spiritual state, she immediately began to secretly investigate the whereabouts of the demon ancestor. After I learned of this, I was afraid that something would happen to her. So I put her under house arrest. At first, she didn't have any complaints, but as time passed, she began to blame me. Especially when you returned to the imperial capital, her resentment towards me grew deeper and deeper. Of course, I didn't blame her. After all, it was my incompetence that caused you to fall to this point. In the end, I had no choice but to abolish her position as empress and imprison her. However, I didn't expect that you would actually bring a group of forgotten continents' fake gods back. The emperor smiled bitterly. Qin Feiyang asked, "Then do you know where mother is now?" "I don't know. To be honest, your mother's temper is really too fierce." "Do you still remember the agreement you forced me to sign?" The emperor said. "Of course I remember. Within 10 years, you are not allowed to hurt my mother or anyone related to me." Qin Feiyang said. "Yes, that's the agreement. Actually, this agreement is exactly what I want. Because I don't want to hurt your people anymore. And I don't want to imprison your mother again and let her continue to suffer." At that time, I also thought that after suffering so much in the divine prison, your mother would stop. But that's not the case at all. She was still secretly investigating the hiding place of the demon ancestor. Then one day, the imperial tutor finally found out that your mother was investigating the whereabouts of the demon ancestor. In a rage, he kidnapped your mother. At that time, I was really going crazy. But fortunately, you brought people back and found your mother. The emperor smiled. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, "So it's very likely that mother is still investigating the demon ancestor's lair?" "It's not likely, it's certain," the emperor said. "Mother," Qin Feiyang murmured. At that time in the Sea of Reincarnation, he couldn't figure out why his mother left silently after escaping. It turned out that his mother had been secretly investigating the whereabouts of the demon ancestor. And at that time, his mother must have already found some clues. But because she was afraid of implicating him, she didn't tell him. This was a mother's love. It was higher than the sky, thicker than the earth, and bigger than the sea. In comparison, his father, Qin Feiyang, looked at the emperor. Compared to his mother, he did seem a little. But then, he shook his head again and erased the thoughts in his mind. What was he thinking? His father had enough headaches over the years. And as the emperor of a country, he had to consider far more things than his mother, so naturally, he would be especially cautious. The emperor sighed and said, "Feiyang, you shouldn't have killed the commander of the Kirin army. After all, he was forced to save Zhuge Shenfeng. Who told you to hide it from me?" Qin Feiyang pursed his lips. Now that he had killed him, what else could he do? Wait. The corpse of the commander of the Kirin army was still there. If he opened the gate of rebirth again in the future, wouldn't he be able to resurrect the commander of the Kirin army? Thinking of this, Qin Feiyang said telepathically, "Father, find a chance later to put away the corpse of the commander of the Kirin army." "Why?" The emperor thought to himself. Qin Feiyang said, "In the future, I may be able to resurrect him." "Really?" The emperor was surprised. "Yes," Qin Feiyang responded secretly, but he didn't say the price of resurrection. Of course, it was impossible for him to open the gate of rebirth again, just for the commander of the Kirin army, because even he couldn't bear the price. Okay, the emperor thought to himself. Wait, this child seemed to be telepathically communicating? The emperor was stunned and secretly said, "Feiyang, your Sea of Qi. My Sea of Qi has never been broken. I did this to force you to tell the truth." Qin Feiyang said telepathically. "It's not broken," the emperor muttered in his heart and said helplessly. "You little brat, you're really weird. But you're right." The emperor was curious. Strong enough to make you despair. In short, the strongest person in our great Qin lineage is Feiyang. He has become the true pillar of our great Qin. Emperor Hong smiled with relief. "The pillar of great Qin," the emperor murmured, looked up at Qin Feiyang, and said with a smile, "Feiyang, you are father's pride. Father is proud of you." Emperor Hong frowned again and said, "But until now, I still have a question that I haven't thought of." "What question?" The emperor was suspicious. Lu family's fourth son's divine phoenix power can compete with Zhuge Mingyang's divine power. But why is Fei Yang's divine dragon power inferior to Zhuge Mingyang's divine power? Logically speaking, the divine power condensed from the purple gold dragon qi should also be able to reach this level. It should even be stronger. Emperor Hong frowned, his expression full of confusion. Because of the blood of the true phoenix. Fourth Grandpa's voice suddenly sounded. Blood of the true phoenix? Emperor Hong and the emperor looked at Fourth Grandpa, their brows full of suspicion. Although bloodline atavism can make our talent better, in order to make our divine power stronger, we must fuse with the blood of the true phoenix. And only by fusing with the blood of the true phoenix can we be considered to have completely atavism. Fourth Grandpa said. Emperor Hong said. In other words, Fei Yang still has to fuse with the blood of the true dragon? Yes. And it must be the blood essence of the purple gold divine dragon. But in today's world, even a divine dragon is hard to find, let alone a purple gold divine dragon. Fourth Grandpa sighed. The blood essence of the purple gold divine dragon. Emperor Hong and the emperor looked at each other, a hint of suspicion flashing in their eyes. The emperor looked at Fourth Grandpa and asked, Then where did you get the blood of the true phoenix? It was left behind by my Lu family's ancestor. There was only one drop. Originally, we planned to leave it to Jia Jin, but although his talent is amazing, his bloodline power has not atavism. Fourth Grandpa said regretfully. So that's how it is. The emperor muttered. When Lu Zheng heard this, he turned to look at the three grandpas and said, What about me? If there are benefits, you can't just think about Big Brother. You? The three of them glanced at Lu Zheng. Second Grandpa shook his head and said, Forget it. You can only be like this for the rest of your life. We have never expected you to become someone like your cousin and your big brother. My temper. Lu Zheng's nose was crooked from anger, and he said angrily, Even if you are elders, I will not forgive you. The three of them rolled their eyes. The emperor looked at Emperor Hong and said with a smile, Grandfather, it seems that the thing that great-grandfather left behind back then was prepared for descendants like Fei Yang who had atavism. Emperor Hong was Qin Fei Yang's great-grandfather, so he was naturally the emperor's grandfather. And the great-grandfather that the emperor mentioned was undoubtedly Emperor Hong's father, Emperor Qin. That's right. I didn't understand before, and I didn't take it seriously. But after hearing Lu family's fourth son's words, I finally understand. Emperor Hong exhaled, looked at the emperor, and said in a low voice, Go and get the imperial jade seal immediately. How can I go now? The emperor smiled bitterly. His qi si had not been repaired, so he could not open the portal. Emperor Hong was stunned, shook his head, looked down at Second Grandpa, and said, Second Grandpa Lu, let us enter the enchantment. There's no other way. This enchantment you can only leave, not enter. Second Grandpa said. What? Emperor Hong was surprised. You can only leave, not enter? What should he do now? The qi si of the three of them was also destroyed. If he went to get the imperial jade seal, the state preceptor would definitely take the opportunity to attack the emperor and the three of them. He could also take the emperor and the three of them back to the imperial palace. But what about those Marquis and the Kirin army? As soon as he left, the state preceptor would definitely take the opportunity to attack. Although these Marquis were not strong, they were the foundation of Great Qin. Once all the Marquis were killed, the order of Great Qin would be in chaos. Qin Sheng said suspiciously, Emperor Hong, didn't you get a space divine object in the miracle? I did, but it was taken by the state preceptor. Emperor Hong's expression was quite angry. Inner Demon's Emperor Hong waved his hand and said, You go get it, I'll protect them. Can you do it alone? Emperor Hong was stunned and asked, Nonsense. Inner Demon's Emperor Hong glared at him, snatched the heavenly great sword and shouted, Go! Okay. Emperor Hong nodded, immediately opened a teleportation door, turned around and rushed in. And, seeing this, the state preceptor's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. What was this old thing going to do? However, this was an opportunity. His eyes flashed with killing intent, and he shouted, Law enforcers, listen to my order. Immediately kill those Marquis and the Kirin army. Hearing this order, a group of law enforcers looked at each other. Those Marquis and the Kirin army were also in a panic. The strength of the law enforcers, especially the law enforcers of the inner hall, far surpassed these Marquis and the Kirin army. Once they attacked, the consequences would be unimaginable. What? You dare to disobey my orders? Don't forget, you are all controlled by the blood soul technique. The state preceptor turned to look at the law enforcers and shouted angrily. The law enforcers' eyes trembled. Boom! Immediately, waves of aura erupted. Thousands of law enforcers, majestically charged towards those Marquis and the Kirin army. You all step back. Inner Demon's Emperor Hong's eyes surged with killing intent, and with a wave of his hand, the Emperor and Qin Sheng immediately landed on the ground in the distance. Boom! Immediately after, Inner Demon's Emperor Hong used teleportation and charged towards those law enforcers. Your opponent is this old man. The state preceptor smiled coldly and stood in front of Inner Demon's Emperor Hong. His aura was like a rainbow. Get lost! Inner Demon's Emperor Hong roared. The heavenly greatsword awakened and slashed out. Humph! You are not the only one with a divine weapon. The state preceptor snorted, and with a wave of his old hand, a black sickle appeared. He grabbed the sickle, and divine power surged in. The sickle suddenly bloomed with a black light, like the sickle of a death god, and charged towards the heavenly great sword. Clang! The two divine weapons met, and sparks flew. The sharpness was actually equally matched. That group of Marquis and the Kirin army, looking at those murderous law enforcers, had long been scared out of their wits. The law enforcers of the temple were originally a sharp blade, dedicated to eradicating dissidents for the emperor. In other words, they only obeyed the emperor. Of course, now they obeyed the state preceptor. For these cold-blooded and ruthless law enforcers, the entire court, civil and military officials, all respected them like gods. And the law enforcement hall was the nightmare of countless people, and they did not want to go in even if they died. So, at this moment, their hearts were filled with despair. Some of the more timid people were scared witless. Inner Demon's Emperor Hong shouted, "Why are you still not running?" His voice was like a bell, shaking the sky. A group of Marquis and the Kirin army quivered, hurriedly opened the teleportation door, and fled in panic. Seeing this, Second Grandpa said in a deep voice, "Old Three, come with me to help." Third Grandpa nodded. "You are at least my great Qin's Marquis, to actually be so unbearable, what a joke." But at this time, Qin Feiyang's voice sounded. Everyone raised their heads to look at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and a divine seal appeared out of thin air. Perfect divine art, divine dragon seal. Zhuge Mingyang was sent flying on the spot, his body bleeding profusely. Following closely, Qin Feiyang lowered his head to look at those law enforcers, his hands forming seals at lightning speed. One after another slavery seals appeared, like a meteor shower, flying towards the top of those law enforcers' heads. This is not good. Ancestor, quickly cripple their bloodline power. Zhuge Mingyang shouted. The slavery seal could break the blood spirit technique. Once these law enforcers regained their freedom, it was very likely that they would immediately rebel. Although he had never put these law enforcers in his eyes, he could not let the great Qin Empire take advantage of them. Chapter 1791. Hearing this, the imperial tutor raised his head to look at those slave seals, and his face suddenly changed. He knew that the slave seals could break the blood soul technique. So even without Zhuge Mingyang's reminder, he knew what Qin Feiyang was going to do. He made a prompt decision. With a thought, he activated the blood soul technique. However, at this moment, the purple gold dragon soul roared at the imperial tutor, and the emperor prison instantly opened. The imperial tutor was immediately imprisoned in the void, and it was a complete imprisonment. Even the blood in his body stopped flowing. Even his mind fell into a blank. "You're courting death," Zhuge Mingyang roared, waving his big hand. And the heavenly demon's hand flew out, carrying a world-destroying ferocious power, and slapped towards the purple gold dragon soul. Humph! Qin Feiyang snorted disdainfully, and the divine dragon seal appeared again, blasting towards the heavenly demon's hand. There was no suspense. Facing a perfect divine art, it was completely crushed. The heavenly demon's hand shattered. Zhuge Mingyang was also sent flying, blood gushing out of his mouth. At the same time, those slave seals sank into the heads of those law enforcers, and screams resounded through the sky. Qin Feiyang not only helped them break the blood-soul technique, but also controlled them. These people were all the imperial tutor's subordinates. If he did not control them, he would not be at ease. And the inner demon's Emperor Hong also seized the opportunity to revive the heavenly great sword, slashing towards the imperial tutor. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Just as Qin Feiyang broke the blood-soul technique, the imperial tutor regained consciousness. Seeing the inner demon's Emperor Hong's sword slashing towards him, his face suddenly changed. However, although he regained consciousness, his body could not move. He looked at the heavenly great sword in horror, his eyes full of despair. If this sword came down, wouldn't he be cut in half? At this critical moment, Zhuge Mingyang's eyes were gloomy, and with a wave of his hand, the heavenly demon flag appeared, and with a monstrous demonic power, it blasted into the Emperor prison. Kacha! The Emperor prison was actually shattered by the heavenly demon flag. The imperial tutor immediately regained his freedom, and without hesitation, he hurriedly retreated. Puff! The heavenly great sword fell and blood splattered across the sky. On his chest, there was a wound so deep that his bones could be seen. However, the state preceptor was rejoicing. Fortunately, Zhuge Mingyang had intervened in time. Otherwise, this sword strike wouldn't have just injured him, it would have taken his life. However, although his life had been saved, his face was filled with disbelief as he looked up at the purple gold dragon soul. In the past, he had fought with Qin Feiyang and seen the Emperor Divine prison, but he had never felt his mind go blank. Qin Feiyang lowered his head to look at the imperial advisor and said, "It seems like you have already discovered the changes in my Emperor Divine prison. What's going on?" The imperial master said in a deep voice. "As you can see, my purple gold dragon soul has not only awakened the eye of heaven, but the Emperor Divine prison has also undergone new changes. This change, I call it consciousness deprivation. In other words, not only can the Emperor Divine prison imprison living beings, it can also strip away their consciousness. I think I don't need to tell you how terrifying it is to lose consciousness during a battle." Qin Feiyang said. Consciousness deprivation. The state preceptor's heart was in turmoil. Awakening the eye of heaven was already very shocking, but he didn't expect the Emperor Divine prison to have such a terrifying ability. In the world today, who could be his opponent in the same realm? Consciousness deprivation. At the same time, when Zhuge Mingyang heard this, he also felt a lingering fear. Fortunately, Qin Feiyang didn't activate the Emperor Divine prison when he fought with him. Otherwise, he would have been caught off guard and suffered a great loss. He might even lose his life on the spot. However, now that he was prepared, there was nothing to be afraid of. Not to mention, he still had a trump card. Zhuge Mingyang waved his hand, and the sky demon flag turned into a black light and returned to his side. The demonic aura spread in all directions. Sky demon flag. Qin Feiyang looked at the sky demon flag, his eyes flickering. This demonic item could instantly destroy the Emperor Divine prison. It seemed that he couldn't underestimate it. Zhuge Mingyang laughed. "You probably don't know that the sky demon flag is a heaven-defying artifact. Do you think heaven-defying artifacts are cabbages?" Qin Feiyang sneered. Hee. Indeed, the sky demon flag hasn't reached the level of a heaven-defying artifact yet, but its power. Zhuge Mingyang waved his hand and divine power surged out and entered the sky demon flag. The sky demon flag buzzed and trembled. Roar! A gigantic demonic dragon suddenly roared as it appeared. The demonic dragon was blood red, and its demonic aura shook the world. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it pounced toward Qin Feiyang. Boom! Qin Feiyang didn't underestimate it. The divine dragon seal appeared and blasted toward the demonic dragon. Because of the aura emitted by the demonic dragon, even he couldn't help but feel flustered. Boom! The two behemoths collided, and the world suddenly lost its color. A destructive aura gushed out in all directions like a tidal wave, and under Qin Feiyang's shocked gaze, the divine dragon seal and the demonic dragon actually dissipated at the same time in the void. In other words, the power of the sky demon flag was completely on par with the divine dragon seal. The divine artifacts in the world are also divided into grades. Low-grade divine artifact, middle-grade divine artifact, high-grade divine artifact, supreme-grade divine artifact. This sky demon flag is a supreme-grade divine artifact. The power of a supreme-grade divine artifact is completely on par with a perfect divine art. Haha, are you surprised? You have a perfect divine art, the divine dragon secret art. I have a supreme-grade divine artifact, the sky demon flag. In today's battle, who will win and who will lose is still unknown. Zhuge Mingyang laughed wildly. Supreme-grade divine artifact, Qin Feiyang muttered. The divine artifact was divided into low-grade, middle-grade, high-grade, and supreme-grade. The divine art was divided into low-grade, middle-grade, high-grade, and perfect. Indeed, as Zhuge Mingyang said, supreme-grade divine artifact was comparable to a perfect divine art. However, so what if it was a supreme-grade divine artifact? The means he displayed now were not even 1/5 of his peak state. Roar! His mind moved. A purple-gold divine dragon roared out. Divine dragon roar. Invisible sound waves like a tide drowned the void and rushed toward Zhuge Mingyang. It's useless. Zhuge Mingyang laughed and waved the sky demon flag. The wind whistled and swept across the sky. Among them, there were also roars, like the roars of ghosts, making one's scalp tingle. Rumble. The invisible sound waves and the whistling wind. The two collided wildly in the void, the destructive aura covering the sky and earth. The void was collapsing. The earth was sinking. It was like the scene of the end of the world, shocking the world. The emperor looked at the battlefield in the sky and said in a deep voice, I didn't expect this Zhuge Mingyang to have such a terrifying demonic creature. It seems that your highness will be in a tough battle. Qin Sheng sighed. Originally, he thought that Qin Feiyang's means had become so strong that he would definitely be able to end the battle easily. But he didn't expect that Zhuge Mingyang's background was also so shocking. Sky Demon Flag. They had never seen a divine artifact of this level. Swish. It was also at this time. Emperor Hong returned, holding the Imperial Jade Seal in his hand. And he specially ran back for the Imperial Jade Seal. The state preceptor was stunned. Lu Zheng, second grandpa, and the others also looked at Emperor Hong suspiciously. Emperor Hong glanced at the state preceptor, looked at the Qin Sheng trio, and asked with a smile, Do you know what is in my hand? What do you mean? The three were suspicious. It's not like they haven't seen the Imperial Jade Seal before. Was there a need to ask? This is the Imperial Jade Seal. It was my father, Qin Feiyang's great-grandfather, personally made. Emperor Hong laughed. We know, Qin Sheng trio said. Emperor Hong asked, Then do you know what is in this Imperial Jade Seal? Inside the Imperial Jade Seal? The three were stunned, looked at the Imperial Jade Seal, and said in surprise, Is there something hidden inside? Yes. Emperor Hong nodded, stretched out his hand to the inner demons and said, Give me the heavenly great sword. The inner demons handed the heavenly great sword to Emperor Hong. Emperor Hong grabbed the heavenly great sword and immediately slashed at the Imperial Jade Seal. Seeing this scene, Qin Sheng trio's expression changed. Qin Sheng hurriedly grabbed Emperor Hong's arm and exclaimed, Emperor Hong, what are you doing? You'll know later. Emperor Hong smiled, indicating for Qin Sheng to let go. Qin Sheng shook his head and said, If you don't make it clear, I will never let you do this. You are the son of the previous emperor. How can you destroy the Imperial Jade Seal? The emperor said, Grandfather is doing this for the good of Feiyang. For the good of his highness? Qin Sheng frowned, turned to look at the emperor and said angrily, Your Majesty, why are you messing around? Destroying the Imperial Jade Seal, and for the good of Qin Feiyang. This had nothing to do with it. The emperor said, Leave. Your Majesty, Qin Sheng roared. Leave. The emperor frowned and shouted, Sigh. Qin Sheng sighed and retreated to the side angrily. The emperor looked at Emperor Hong and warned, Grandfather, be gentle. Don't destroy the things inside. All right. Emperor Hong nodded, raised the heavenly great sword and cut down bit by bit. Who are these people? Even the Imperial Jade Seal left behind by the previous emperor is going to be destroyed. If the previous emperor knew about this, he would probably jump out of the coffin in anger on the spot. Looking at this scene, Qin Sheng was incomparably angry. The other two old men looked at Emperor Hong's actions, and their brows were filled with dissatisfaction. But suddenly, a powerful aura surged out from the imperial ruler's seal. This is Qin Sheng, and the other two were surprised. It was actually a dragon's might, and it was extremely pure. It was the first time in their lives that they had sensed such a pure dragon's might. It felt as if there was a divine dragon sealed inside the imperial jade seal. The state preceptor, Lu Zheng, second grandpa, and the rest of the Lu family were also surprised. Even Qin Feiyang and Zhuge Mingyang were alarmed. The two stopped at the same time and looked down at the imperial jade seal in Emperor Hong's hand. At this moment, the imperial jade seal was cut in half. Not only the dragon's might, but there were also strands of purple gold divine light that shot out from the cracks, extremely dazzling. A few breaths passed. With a crisp sound, the imperial jade seal suddenly split into two. Emperor Hong also immediately put away the heavenly great sword. Immediately, that purple gold divine light was as dazzling as the scorching sun. At the same time, Qin Feiyang's bloodline power suddenly went berserk, crazily rolling and surging in his body. P.S. I was delayed by something today. I tried my best to rush out, but I only managed to rush out one chapter. Everyone don't wait. Genius remembered this site's address in a second. Mobile version of reading website, M. Chapter 1792. Qin Feiyang noticed this abnormality at the first moment. He hurriedly looked inside his body. His blood was flowing wildly, and even seemed to be burning. All over his skin, there was a faint burning sensation. He was extremely surprised. What was going on with this throbbing from his bloodline power? All of a sudden, his eyes shot out a bright light, and he lowered his head again to look at the imperial seal. The change in his bloodline power seemed to be caused by this imperial seal. What exactly was inside? Why would it make his bloodline power so restless? Looking at Emperor Hong again, after putting away the heavenly great sword, he held half of the imperial seal in each hand, and then slowly separated. There was also an unconcealable excitement in his expression. Finally, the two halves of the imperial seal separated. The thing hidden inside also appeared in front of everyone's eyes. They saw that in the center of the imperial seal, there was a purple gold crystal. The crystal was extremely small, estimated to be the size of a mung bean. It was crystalline and translucent like a peerless divine jade, and it was dazzling and extremely beautiful. It's actually, when second grandpa, third grandpa, and fourth grandpa saw the crystal, their old eyes were full of shock. What is it? Lu Zheng asked in surprise. The blood essence of the purple gold divine dragon. Fourth grandpa said with a pause between each word. What? It's actually the blood essence of the purple gold divine dragon. Everyone was dumbfounded. Qin Feiyang's eyes also suddenly widened, full of disbelief. There was actually a drop of purple gold divine dragon's blood essence, hidden in the imperial seal? This was such an unbelievable thing. But it happened in front of them. Wait. Since it's the blood essence of the purple gold divine dragon, why is it a crystal? Lu Zheng was suspicious. It's because it's been stored for too long. The blood has solidified, and it's completely sealed, so it slowly turned into a blood crystal. Fourth grandpa said. The blood essence of the purple gold divine dragon. Zhuge Mingyang was also in extreme disbelief. Qin Feiyang swallowed his saliva and said with difficulty, Great-grandpa, is this also left by the ancestors? Yes. Emperor Hong nodded. Qin Feiyang wanted to say something again. But suddenly, the bloodline power in his body became even more frenzied, pulling his body towards the blood crystal. Qin Feiyang was taken aback and quickly stabilized his body. However, the more he did this, the crazier the bloodline power in his body became. In the end, his body flew towards the blood crystal uncontrollably. He could even clearly sense the bloodline power's desire for blood crystals. Seeing Qin Feiyang's abnormal behavior, Zhuge Mingyang frowned. The state preceptor was also suspicious. But suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something as his face changed drastically. He shouted, Mingyang, stop him. He wants to merge with the blood crystal. Fusion. Zhuge Mingyang was bewildered. Just now, I heard the conversation between Emperor Hong and Lu family's fourth brother. The reason why Lu family's fourth brother's divine power can contend against your divine power is because he has fused with the blood of the true phoenix. The state preceptor said in a deep voice. You mean, after Qin Feiyang fuses with this drop of purple gold divine dragon's blood essence, the power of his divine power will also become stronger? Zhuge Mingyang said. Yes. Once he fuses with this drop of blood crystal, his bloodline power will completely return to its ancestral state. At that time, his strength will definitely become stronger. He must be stopped. The state preceptor roared. Boom! When Zhuge Mingyang heard this, he immediately activated the Sky Devil flag and rushed towards Qin Feiyang. So that's how it is. Only by fusing with the blood of the true dragon can my bloodline power be considered to have completely returned to its ancestral state. Qin Feiyang muttered. Previously, when he was fighting with Zhuge Mingyang in the sky, he did not pay attention to the conversation between Emperor Hong and the others. It was only now that he understood. It turned out that the reason Emperor Hong took this drop of blood essence was to fuse with him and make him stronger. Since it was such a good thing, then he absolutely could not let Zhuge Mingyang mess it up. Supreme Emperor. When the statue appeared, its divine might shook the world. Zhuge Mingyang and the Sky Devil flag were immediately stopped. A cold light flashed in the state preceptor's eyes. He leaped and pounced towards Qin Feiyang. Even Zhuge Mingyang is not my opponent, let alone an old bastard like you. Qin Feiyang smiled contemptuously. The divine dragon seal appeared, carrying a monstrous aura as it blasted towards the state preceptor. Ah! With a scream, the state preceptor was immediately blasted away, his body dripping with blood. Is this the perfect divine technique? The state preceptor murmured. Too terrifying. The moment he faced the divine dragon seal, he felt as if he was facing a death god. An uncontrollable fear emerged in his heart. Amazing! Emperor Hong, second grandpa, and the others saw this scene and laughed out loud. To injure the state preceptor in an instant, who could compete with such means? This kid had completely grown up. It was time for them old guys to withdraw from the stage. Clang! Boom! High up in the sky, the statue formed by the Supreme Emperor crazily collided with Zhuge Mingyang and the Sky Devil flag. The state preceptor was also blasted thousands of miles away, his body bleeding profusely. And those law enforcers, after the blood soul technique was broken, also obediently retreated to the distance to watch the battle. So now no one could stop Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang landed beside Emperor Hong. Back then, my father once told me that in the Imperial Jade Seal, there was a drop of purple gold divine dragon's blood essence, but he didn't tell me the purpose. So I didn't take it to heart, and even slowly forgot about it. And just now, when I heard the words of the Lu family's fourth son, I suddenly realized. So this drop of purple gold divine dragon's blood essence was specially left for the descendants of bloodline atavism. Emperor Hong laughed. The emperor shook his head and sighed. Great-grandfather, he really planned far ahead. Take it. Emperor Hong handed the blood crystal in front of Qin Feiyang. Facing the true dragon's blood close at hand, the bloodline power in Qin Feiyang's body had already gone crazy to an unprecedented level. Qin Feiyang glanced at Emperor Hong and the emperor, stretched out his arm, and took the blood crystal. Immediately, the blood crystal melted in his palm and quickly seeped into his body, merging with the bloodline power. Boom! Inside his body, there seemed to be some shackles broken, exploding with a muffled bang. Following closely, an extremely pure dragon might roared out from his body. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and a wisp of divine dragon power emerged. At that moment, a destructive aura enveloped all directions. The void crazily shattered. The emperor and the other two, under this aura, felt as if they were trapped in an ice cellar, their whole body cold. Emperor Hong's pupils also contracted, full of fear. But at the same time, they couldn't help but be excited, because at this moment, Qin Feiyang's divine dragon power was several times stronger than before. So this is the true power of the purple gold dragon Qi, Qin Feiyang murmured. Looking at the divine dragon power at this moment, he couldn't help but be moved. Boom! He turned around and walked towards the sky step by step, as if there was an invisible ladder under his feet. His long hair fluttered, his clothes fluttered, giving people a feeling of ethereal. Everyone looked at him, as if they were looking at an immortal monarch stepping into the air. That kind of calm temperament, that invisible domineering aura, that resolute face, and that imposing figure, at this moment, were deeply imprinted in everyone's soul, unable to be erased. Finally, he stood opposite Zhuge Mingyang and said lightly, "Your so-called advantages are all gone. I don't believe that your divine dragon power can be compared with my death god power." Zhuge Mingyang roared, and instantly teleported in front of Qin Feiyang, raising his hand and punching out. Gray-white divine power rolled out, annihilating in all directions. Death god power. So this is your divine power. Qin Feiyang whispered, also raised his arm, and punched towards Zhuge Mingyang. The divine dragon power surged, shattering the void. Boom! The two fists collided together. The two divine powers continued to clash, and the surrounding void continued to collapse. At this moment, Qin Feiyang's divine dragon power was not inferior to Zhuge Mingyang's death god power at all. Why? Why exactly? I paid such a huge price in exchange for this death god power. And Qin Feiyang, without doing anything, got the divine dragon power. Why is it so unfair? God, I hate you! Zhuge Mingyang roared into the sky, his grayish-white hair fluttered, and his body burned with wisps of devil flames. Following closely, a terrifying aura of death, with this place as the center, surged in all directions. Immediately, flowers, plants, and trees all withered. Emperor Hong, the Emperor Qin Shi III, and even Qin Feiyang and the state preceptor, the blood and vitality in their bodies were also flowing away crazily. Emperor Hong looked at those marquis, law enforcers, and the commanders of the Kirin army and roared, "This is no longer a place where you can stay, quickly leave." When the group of people heard this, they opened the portal one after another, and ran in, as if they were running for their lives. Emperor Hong also brought the emperor and Qin Sheng with him, as he flew away without looking back. In their hearts, they were all extremely shocked. Could it be that this Zhuge Mingyang was really a god of death? I want to destroy everything. I want you to despair. I want you to suffer. I want this continent to be plunged into misery and suffering, and not even a blade of grass will grow. Zhuge Mingyang had completely gone mad. That terrifying death aura seemed endless, constantly emerging from his body, and had spread tens of thousands of miles away. Flowers, plants, and trees all withered. Fierce beasts and wild beasts also turned into dried corpses in an instant. In less than 3 breaths, within tens of thousands of miles, it became a land of death, without any vitality. The void was filled with a tragic aura. Only the Lu family, under the protection of the enchantment, was safe and sound. But the second grandpa was very anxious at this moment, and shouted, "Feiyang, outside the mountain range, there are dozens of villages, and the people living there are ordinary people. Quickly stop him." Dozens of villages. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. The second grandpa said in a deep voice, "Yes, at least tens of thousands of people. According to his trend, not to mention those dozens of villages, I'm afraid the entire imperial capital will suffer in the end." The fourth grandpa also followed. Qin Feiyang glanced around. This death aura was indeed not ordinary terrifying. However, this Zhuge Mingyang was really ruthless. Even the state preceptor was not spared. In just a short while, the state preceptor's old face, which was already a bit older, became even older. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath, looked up at Zhuge Mingyang, and said, "It's time to end it. And this time, you can forget about resurrecting." Haha. Let me tell you, the only one I hate in my heart now is you. If you have the guts, try to kill me. Zhuge Mingyang laughed wildly. Chapter 1793. I'm the only one you hate, Qin Feiyang muttered. With his current methods, it was actually easy to kill Zhuge Mingyang. But he didn't dare to. Why? It was because he was afraid that Zhuge Mingyang would revive again. One had to know. If Zhuge Mingyang was given another chance to revive, his cultivation would most likely break through to the level of war god. At that time, it would undoubtedly be even more difficult to get rid of Zhuge Mingyang. So, he had been waiting. He had also been thinking of ways to anger Zhuge Mingyang, because only in this way would Zhuge Mingyang transfer all his hatred to him. In this way, Zhao Tailai and the others who were hiding in the Black Tortoise realm would undoubtedly have a chance. As for whether Zhuge Mingyang would transfer his hatred to Zhao Tailai and the others in the end, he wasn't worried at all, because hatred wasn't something that could be transferred just like that. There had to be a process. Just like last time, Zhuge Mingyang transferred his hatred to Lu Jiajin, because Lu Jiajin had displayed amazing talent, causing Zhuge Mingyang to be unreconciled, and thus hate him. In other words, as long as Zhao Tailai and the others could get rid of Zhuge Mingyang in one go, then they would be able to kill him completely, because Zhuge Mingyang simply didn't have the time, nor the opportunity, to transfer his hatred. So, when he heard Zhuge Mingyang say that he only hated him, he knew that the time had come. Do you hate me? Qin Feiyang chuckled and activated his 3,000 incarnations. 500 incarnations appeared in the void. Qin Feiyang joked, looking at this scene, do you hate me even more? Zhuge Mingyang was about to go crazy. 3,000 incarnations was his god art. If he had these 3,000 incarnations now, why would he be afraid of Qin Feiyang? The death god's power surged out and poured into the Sky Devil flag. The Sky Devil flag was vast and mighty, shattering the void for thousands of miles as it charged towards Qin Feiyang. Hate. The deeper your hatred for me, the easier it will be to kill you. Qin Feiyang muttered to himself. His 500 incarnations simultaneously transformed into the sovereign of the 9 and 5. 500 statues towered into the clouds. Divine might shook the heavens and the earth. Even the supreme grade heavenly fiend flag could not help but tremble in the face of the 500 statues. It stopped in midair and did not dare to take another step forward. Sky Demon flag, are you betraying me? Zhuge Mingyang roared. The Sky Demon flag remained indifferent. Zhuge Mingyang was mad with anger. He roared, Ancestor, quickly come and help. The Imperial Tutor's eyes flickered. Damn it! Zhuge Mingyang roared. How does it feel to be betrayed by your friends? However, you don't have the right to blame Zhuge Xinyan, because you were the one who disrespected him first. For someone like you, even if you live to the end, even if you stand at the peak of this world and become the ruler of the world, you will still lose everything. Qin Feiyang said, If I am really the ruler of this world, what is the use of having them? I alone am enough to destroy everything. Unfortunately, I am not. Zhuge Mingyang roared. Sigh. If there is no kinship, no love, no friendship, what is the point of becoming the ruler of this world? Qin Feiyang sighed. That is why it is difficult for you to achieve great things. Zhuge Mingyang sneered. You still don't understand. The strong should be respected, not feared. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Cut the crap, Sky Demon flag, quickly attack. Zhuge Mingyang roared hysterically. Whoosh. However, hearing this, the Sky Demon flag did not attack Qin Feiyang. Instead, it turned into a stream of light and escaped into the sky. Damn it, damn it. Zhuge Mingyang roared like thunder. Mingyang, do you still not understand? The Sky Demon flag has begun to hate you. Furthermore, the owner of the Sky Demon flag is your master, not you. You can't command it. The State Preceptor sighed. Zhuge Mingyang instantly glared at him and roared. If you don't want to help, then shut up. Otherwise, I will kill you first. The State Preceptor was silent. He looked at Zhuge Mingyang, feeling extremely pained. All along, he had spared no effort to nurture Zhuge Mingyang at all costs. He even treated Zhuge Mingyang as his own child. However, he did not expect that the outcome would be like this. Actually, you don't have to fight to the death with Qin Feiyang. As long as you enter the divine item, what can he do to you? The State Preceptor shook his head and did not say anything else. He looked around and began to look for a way out. Hide in the divine item. Haha. I, Zhuge Mingyang, will never do such a cowardly and incompetent thing. Qin Feiyang, today, it's either you die or I die. Zhuge Mingyang roared. The Sky Demon Hand and Bone Dragon art were both evolved. They carried the last of his will and attacked Qin Feiyang. As you wish. Qin Feiyang's eyes turned cold. Clang. The 500 statues raised the broken swords in their hands at the same time. The sharpness of the broken swords could destroy heaven and earth. Boom! When the first broken sword fell, the sky demon hand and bone dragon art were shattered on the spot. This was the power of a perfect divine art. Moreover, the third move, Supremacy of the 9 and 5, was more powerful than the first move, Divine Dragon Seal, and the second move, Divine Dragon Roar. It was unstoppable and unstoppable. I, Zhuge Mingyang, was born to be the overlord of the 8 barren lands. How can I be defeated by you? Sever art, exterminate art, kill, Zhuge Mingyang roared while spurting blood. The destructive power of the 2 divine arts was overwhelming. The first broken sword was immediately shattered with a loud clang. The first statue also disintegrated, but there were still 499 statues behind. The wind howled and the clouds rolled. The so-called sever art and exterminate art were completely unable to resist and collapsed. The 499 broken swords came crashing down. However, there was no fear in Zhuge Mingyang's eyes, nor did he take half a step back. He looked at Qin Feiyang and his eyes calmed down. He shook his head and said, "It seems that no matter how hard I work, I can't surpass you. Why must you compete with me? Isn't it better to be yourself?" Qin Feiyang said, "To vent my anger. I just want to prove that I, Zhuge Mingyang, am not inferior to anyone, including you, Qin Feiyang. Obviously I have failed. But even if I fail, I won't die. The only one who will die will be you." Zhuge Mingyang suddenly smiled, and a destructive aura rushed out of his body. "Damn it! There's a spatial divine object, yet you chose to self-destruct. What a fool!" The Imperial Grand Master roared in exasperation, and hurriedly escaped into the spatial divine object. Feiyang, quickly hide! Second Grandpa and the others also changed their expressions. The self-destruction of a false god was enough to destroy the heavens and the earth, let alone the self-destruction of a war god. But Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear. "You don't even hide from self-destruction, you really aren't afraid of death. But I like it. Don't worry, after I am reborn, I will help you take good care of Emperor Hong and the others, as well as the people from the Liu family." Zhuge Mingyang stared at Qin Feiyang and laughed again and again. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said, "Self-destruction can also be reborn?" "Self-destruction can't be reborn. But if?" Zhuge Mingyang grinned, bringing along that destructive aura. He took a step forward and grabbed Qin Feiyang's arm, his divine power surging out. Following closely, he grabbed Qin Feiyang's arm, and with a poochie sound he forcefully pressed it into his chest. Blood spurted out like a fountain. It even shattered his heart. "This person is too crazy." Second Grandpa and the others looked at Zhuge Mingyang, and their backs couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. "If you self-destruct like this, then it's the same as you killing me, and I can be reborn again. And now, even if you want to enter the ancient castle and Black Tortoise realm, it's already too late. Go to hell." Zhuge Mingyang laughed crazily. "Sigh, even now can't you see it? Ever since I appeared, everything I've done has been to infuriate you. And now, you ran over and stood face to face with me, which is exactly what I was looking forward to. Because of this, Zhao Tailai and the others can kill you in one blow. Don't treat others as fools." Qin Feiyang shook his head. His mind moved. Tang Hai, Zhao Tailai, and Old Man Qin suddenly appeared behind Zhuge Mingyang. The 3C of Qi had already been repaired. Tang Hai held a dagger in his hand, and Zhao Tailai held an axe in his hand. Obviously, they were ready to kill Zhuge Mingyang. As soon as they appeared, Tang Hai didn't say anything, and immediately grabbed the dagger and stabbed Zhuge Mingyang's lower abdomen. His sea of qi shattered. Zhuge Mingyang's self-destruction was forcefully interrupted. How is this possible? Aren't they in the Forgotten Continent? He turned his head in disbelief, but what greeted him was Zhao Tailai's axe. A loud crack sounded. Zhao Tailai's axe split Zhuge Mingyang's skull open, and under the sharp edge of the axe, his soul was shattered on the spot. Fresh blood stained the sky. Zhuge Mingyang didn't even have time to scream before he fell head first onto the ground. However, Qin Feiyang was still worried about his soul being shattered. "Quick! Crush his bones and scatter his ashes!" Qin Feiyang shouted. Zhao Tailai, Tang Hai and Old Man Qin nodded. Divine power rolled out and pounced on Zhuge Mingyang's body. In an instant, flesh and blood flew everywhere. What's going on? Inside the spatial divine item, the Grand Tutor looked at Zhao Tailai and the other two, his old face full of disbelief. Weren't they in the Forgotten Continent? Zheng, they are. Second Grandpa, and the other two looked at Lu Zheng in surprise. Old man Qin, I don't need to introduce you, you know. The other two, one is called Zhao Tailai, and the other is called Tang Hai. They are both war gods, subordinates that my little cousin subdued in the miracle. Lu Zheng smiled. Second Grandpa said, That's not what we're asking. Then what are you asking about? Lu Zheng looked at the three suspiciously. Suddenly he patted his head and smiled. Because of some reason, our battle with Mu Tianyang didn't break out at all. Old man Qin and the others have been waiting in the Black Tortoise realm. Didn't break out? Second Grandpa and the other two looked at each other. In that case, this was a trap set by Qin Feiyang? That's right. This is a trap. He had already planned it before entering the imperial capital. After all, this Zhuge Mingyang is not an ordinary character. It's hard to kill him without some extreme measures. Lu Zheng sighed. Third Grandpa frowned and said, Why are you so afraid of Zhuge Mingyang? You still don't know Zhuge Mingyang's methods. He has mastered a demonic art called the Undying Demonic Art. This demonic art can bring him back to life, and every time he revives, his strength will skyrocket. Lu Zheng said. Chapter 1794. Come back from the dead? Second Grandpa and the others were surprised. Lu Zheng said, I'll tell you in detail later. Fourth Grandpa, can you go out? Yes. Fourth Grandpa nodded. Then this barrier. Lu Zheng scanned the barrier. This barrier comes from this walking stick. When it's activated, I need to use my divine power to activate it. Once it's activated, it no longer needs my divine power to support it. Fourth Grandpa said, There's such a thing. Lu Zheng was surprised and said, Then hurry up and don't let the state preceptor escape. The state preceptor would definitely escape when he saw the three of them. Fourth Grandpa nodded and handed the walking stick to Second Grandpa. He rushed out of the barrier, and his divine power surged in all directions. Found it. Almost at the next moment his eyes flickered. The space divine object was in the void not far from his left. Inside the space divine object, the state preceptor sensed Fourth Grandpa's divine mind, and immediately drove the space divine object to escape. Humph! Fourth Grandpa snorted and teleported in front of the space divine object. His divine power rolled out and condensed into a barrier that immediately enveloped the space divine object. Get out of my way! The state preceptor roared in the space divine object and drove it toward the barrier. With a loud bang, the barrier immediately distorted. However, at this moment, Qin Feiyang suddenly looked up, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Then he grabbed Zhao Tailai's axe and used the Xing formula. He rushed to Fourth Grandpa's side and used his divine mind. Then, he raised his giant axe and slashed at the space divine object. With a loud bang, the space divine object was split in half on the spot. The state preceptor fell out in a sorry state. Fourth Grandpa didn't disperse the barrier and trapped him inside. You had time to escape before, but you didn't. Now that Zhuge Mingyang is dead, you want to escape. Do you think I'll give you the chance? Qin Feiyang looked at the state preceptor coldly. The state preceptor looked at Qin Feiyang and Fourth Grandpa with fear between his brows. He didn't even have the thought of breaking the barrier and escaping. On the other side, Zhao Tailai and the other two finally stopped. This time, not a single strand of hair was left on Zhuge Mingyang's body. It could be said that he was truly crushed into ashes. Qin Feiyang said, Find his spatial divine item. Understood. Zhao Tailai nodded and sent his divine sense downwards. After Zhuge Mingyang died, the spatial divine item became an ownerless item. One had to know. This spatial divine item could even withstand the power of the rule of God's miracle. One could see how high its level was. Therefore, he could not miss this opportunity. Outside the barrier, Fourth Grandpa looked at the state preceptor and asked, Feiyang, should we kill him? You can't kill him. I still need to get the location of the fiend ancestor's lair from him. Speak, where is the lair of the demon ancestor? Qin Feiyang looked at the Imperial Preceptor and said, he wanted nothing more than to chop this person into pieces right now. The reason for that was because it had always been this person who had been causing trouble behind the scenes. It could be said that, without the State Preceptor, many things in the past would not have happened. But Grandpa, Mermaid Princess, Lin Yi and Old Master Run, these people must be saved. Therefore, he must find the lair of the demon ancestor. Do you think I will be naive enough to tell you? If I tell you, will I still have a way out? The State Preceptor calmed down and sneered. A cold light flashed in Qin Feiyang's eyes, and he smiled coldly. It seems that I have to let you have a taste of the puppet technique. The puppet technique could not only control others, but also forcibly read the other party's memory. As long as the State Preceptor was controlled, there was no need to interrogate him to know the location of the demon ancestor's lair. Puppet technique? Fourth Grandpa heard it, and looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously, but the State Preceptor's body trembled. Although he had never been to the Black Tortoise world, he had learned about the puppet technique from Zhuge Mingyang. Qin Feiyang stepped into the barrier. Go to hell! Just as Qin Feiyang entered the barrier, the State Preceptor suddenly exploded and slammed his palm toward Qin Feiyang. Before entering the miracle, I wasn't afraid of you, let alone now. Qin Feiyang raised his arm. His 5 fingers were like an eagle's claw, grabbing the State Preceptor's arm. His other hand then slapped the State Preceptor's lower abdomen. Ah! Accompanied by a pig-like scream, the State Preceptor's sea of qi shattered on the spot. His lower abdomen was also badly mutilated. Terrifying. Fourth Grandpa murmured. The State Preceptor was also a god of war, but he couldn't even resist. What level has this kid's strength reached? The State Preceptor was even more frightened. In the beginning, Qin Feiyang was just an ant-like character in front of him. But now, the other party destroyed his sea of qi with just one blow. In his heart, in addition to fear, there was also shame. After destroying the State Preceptor, Qin Feiyang immediately formed a seal. After all, the demon ancestor wasn't dead yet. Changes could happen at any time. Only by controlling the State Preceptor as fast as possible could he avoid these changes. The State Preceptor sighed. If Zhuge Mingyang was half as nimble as you, he wouldn't have ended up dead. Wrong. Even if he acted decisively before, there wouldn't be any turning point. This is strength. Qin Feiyang shook his head. The puppet imprint turned into a stream of light and rushed toward the State Preceptor's head. Boom! However, at this moment, a terrifying aura emerged. The barrier set up by Fourth Grandpa was shattered on the spot. Who is it? Fourth Grandpa roared and looked up. He saw a blood-red beast pouncing toward the puppet imprint like lightning. Boom! The puppet imprint was immediately shattered by the beast's claw. Following that, the beast directly used its divine power to break the State Preceptor's arm that was grabbed by Qin Feiyang. Then it stretched out its claws, grabbed the State Preceptor, and soared into the sky. All of this happened too quickly. Qin Feiyang didn't even have time to fight back before the State Preceptor was taken thousands of miles away by the beast. It's you! The State Preceptor looked at the beast with a look of ecstasy on his old face. You're really useless. You actually ended up in such a sorry state. The beast glanced at the State Preceptor and snorted coldly. Hearing this, the State Preceptor lowered his head, and the joy on his face turned into anger. Where's Zhuge Mingyang? The beast asked. The State Preceptor said, he has already died in the hands of Qin Feiyang and the others. What? In order to train him, Master paid such a huge price, and even passed on the immortal demon technique and the 6 words killing formula to him. He actually died just like that? The beast said angrily. Not only will he die, you will die too. All of a sudden, a monstrous murderous intent erupted. That ferocious beast raised its head and looked at Qin Feiyang. Its blood-red eyes were filled with contempt. At the same time, Qin Feiyang also stared at the beast, his body full of hostility. He was in such a hurry to control the State Preceptor, because he was afraid that an accident would happen. Unexpectedly, the accident still happened. As for that ferocious beast, it was no ordinary ferocious beast. Its body was 5 meters long, and its fur was as red as blood. It looked exactly like a Kirin. It was the legendary blood Kirin. Feiyang. Young master. Old man Qin quickly flew to Qin Feiyang and fourth grandpa's side. In Zhao Tailai's hand was a palm-sized black castle. Did you find the space treasure? Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. His murderous eyes were fixed on the blood Kirin. Zhao Tailai nodded and handed the castle in his hand to Qin Feiyang. Ha! When the blood Kirin saw the black castle, its eyebrows suddenly raised. It looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Bring that castle to me." What? Zhao Tailai and the others were stunned. Was this bastard dreaming? Qin Feiyang grabbed the castle. Without any suspense, this was Zhuge Mingyang's space treasure. He looked at the blood Kirin and said, "If you want the castle, give me the state preceptor." The blood Kirin laughed and said, "Kid, you can't be so naive." Boom. As soon as it finished speaking, the blood Kirin's aura was fully released. A shocking divine power rushed towards Qin Feiyang and the others. This aura. Old man Qin's eyes trembled as he exclaimed, "Small success, war god." The blood Kirin looked at old man Qin and laughed. "Old man, at least you have some eyesight." Feiyang, what should we do now? Old man Qin was at a loss. A small success war god beast, and a subordinate of the demon ancestor. Its methods were definitely not ordinary. Qin Feiyang looked at the blood Kirin. He did not expect its cultivation to be so strong. However, a small success war god was not without a chance of winning. Killing intent flashed in his eyes. But just as he was about to make a move, the blood Kirin grinned and said, "Also, I will add another bargaining chip." As soon as it finished speaking, a stone coffin flew out from its body. This stone coffin? Old man Qin and the others were shocked. The stone coffin that the blood Kirin took out was the stone coffin that sealed the demon ancestor's divine body. Do you want to know what's inside? The blood Kirin teased. It's definitely not the demon ancestor's divine body. Old man Qin muttered. Qin Feiyang, open your eyes and watch carefully. The blood Kirin waved its claws, and the stone coffin stood upright. Then, it opened the lid, and a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of them. Crack! Qin Feiyang clenched his hands tightly, because the middle-aged man in the stone coffin was one of the people he respected the most in his life, Yan Nanshan. At this moment, Yan Nanshan's face was pale, and his eyes were closed. His aura was extremely weak. The blood Kirin said, "Do you still recognize him?" Qin Feiyang's face was gloomy. The blood Kirin said, "Don't worry. He's not dead yet. His sea of qi has been destroyed and he's in a coma." "What do you want?" Qin Feiyang asked. The blood Kirin said playfully, "Aren't you asking the obvious? Use the castle to trade." Qin Feiyang was silent. "You have no choice. If you don't do as I say, I will kill him. Don't doubt my words." The blood Kirin said. Qin Feiyang said in a low voice, "The demon ancestor should be merging with the divine body right now." "Smart." The blood Kirin said. "That's nothing to praise. You brought the stone coffin here to tell me that the demon ancestor is merging with the divine body, right?" Qin Feiyang said. The blood Kirin was shocked. Then it laughed and said, "You can see through that? Master was right. You are not someone to be underestimated. If the demon ancestor is merging with the divine body, shouldn't you be protecting him in the reincarnation sea? Why are you here?" Qin Feiyang asked. "It's because of Zhuge Mingyang. Master saw that Zhuge Mingyang hadn't sent back any news after so long, so he sent me here to take a look. But I didn't expect that guy to be so useless. You killed him. What a waste of Master's efforts." The blood Kirin grunted coldly. It looked angry. Chapter 1795. What a waste of effort. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and mumbled. His eyes looked cold as he looked at the blood Kirin and the Grand Master. He said, "You two destroyed Zhuge Mingyang." "We destroyed him?" The blood Kirin was shocked. "Yes. Although you gave him great power, you also made him cold-blooded and heartless. So, you have no right to judge him." Qin Feiyang grunted coldly. "I did not expect you to sympathize with an enemy." The blood Kirin was very surprised. "I am not sympathizing with him. I just feel bad for him. With his talent, even without your help, he would have become a hero sooner or later. But he foolishly chose a path of no return. He chose to work with trash like you." Qin Feiyang's eyes were full of disgust. We are trash. When the blood Kirin heard this, it laughed and said, Of course you are crazy. But I think you have the wrong person. I am not like that piece of trash Zhuge Mingyang. You have to pay a price for being so arrogant in front of me. After that, the blood Kirin's eyes looked ferocious. God power appeared, and it cut off Yin Nanshan's arm. Blood flowed out of the coffin. The intense pain caused Yin Nanshan to wake up from his coma. His face was contorted from the pain. Fei Yang. But when he saw Qin Fei Yang, he forgot about the pain. Uncle Yin, I am sorry. I dragged you into this. Qin Fei Yang looked at Yin Nanshan, his face full of self-blame. If it wasn't for him, Demon Alpha wouldn't have attacked them. What are you talking about? Yin Nanshan shouted angrily. He shook his head and sighed. Fei Yang, we dragged you into this. We are like a burden to you. No. Whether it is you or the old man, you are all my most respected elders. In the past you protected me. Now it is my turn to protect you. Qin Fei Yang said. Ha ha. This is so touching. The blood Kirin laughed. Blood Kirin. Yin Nanshan's eyes trembled as he roared. Fei Yang, don't worry about me. Do what you have to do. Don't let me become your burden. Qin Fei Yang smiled at Yin Nanshan. He looked at the blood Kirin and said, I agree. You should have done this a long time ago. Bring it over quickly. The blood Kirin laughed. Qin Fei Yang placed the black castle in front of Tang Hai and said, Send it over. Tang Hai looked at Qin Fei Yang, and his eyes flashed. He didn't say a word and took the castle. Then he flew over to the blood Kirin and the Grandmaster. The imperial tutor glanced at Tang Hai, his eyes full of vigilance. He reminded in a low voice, Lord Qilin, be careful of their tricks. Are you looking down on me? This emperor is a low-level war god. Why would I be afraid of their tricks? The blood Kirin raised its eyebrows and glared at the Grandmaster. I don't dare. The state preceptor quickly lowered his head, his eyes filled with fear. He was Demon Alpha's subordinate, so he knew what the blood Kirin was capable of. It could be said that this beast was a demon that ate people without spitting out the bones. Even if it was its companion, if they angered it, it wouldn't show any mercy. Oomph. The blood Kirin grunted coldly. It raised its head and looked at Tang Hai. There was a sinister smile in its blood-red eyes. Swoosh. Tang Hai flew over and stopped a few feet away from the blood Kirin. He looked at Yin Nanshan and said coldly, Let him go first. However, the blood Kirin responded with a blast of god power. Arg! The god power rushed into the stone coffin. Yin Nanshan screamed in pain as his other arm was broken. The blood Kirin laughed cruelly. Don't test my patience again. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about me. Didn't you hear me? Yin Nanshan shouted angrily. Tang Hai looked at Yin Nanshan and sighed. Although I don't know what your relationship with the young master is, based on his behavior, I can tell that you used to be very good to him. The young master is a righteous person. Now that you are in trouble, how could he stand by and watch you die? Being righteous isn't necessarily a good thing. Yin Nanshan said gloomily. Yes, I admit that. But do you know why old Zhao and I followed him? It's precisely because he values relationships and righteousness. Maybe he will lose a lot because of this, but he will also gain a lot. After Tang Hai spoke, he waved his hand. The black castle in his hand flew toward the blood Kirin. Why didn't you do this earlier? You made Yin Nanshan suffer so much. The blood Kirin reached out its claws and grabbed the black castle. It laughed mockingly. Whoosh! But just as it spoke, Tang Hai suddenly jumped up. He was like a ghost as he landed on top of the blood Kirin's head. A black dagger appeared in a flash. He grabbed the dagger and stabbed it toward the blood Kirin's head. At the same time, Qin Fei Yang used the walk word and flew toward the stone coffin. That was right. Tang Hai's attack had been ordered by him. Although he hadn't said it explicitly, Tang Hai understood what he meant. Why had Qin Fei Yang attacked? It was because the blood Kirin's words couldn't be trusted. The most important thing was that Yin Nanshan had been to the Demon Alpha's lair. If Yin Nanshan returned to Qin Fei Yang, he would definitely tell Qin Fei Yang where the Demon Alpha's lair was. Because of that, the blood Kirin wasn't going to give Yin Nanshan back to Qin Fei Yang. It could only take him by surprise. However, in the face of Tang Hai's sudden attack, the blood Kirin didn't panic at all. On the contrary, Its eyes were full of contempt. After grabbing the Black Castle, it immediately teleported with the Grandmaster and appeared thousands of miles away. Tang Hai was a little annoyed, but he didn't chase after them, because their goal was only to save Yin Nanshan. Now that the Blood Kirin had escaped, there was no way to stop them. Whoosh! Qin Feiyang flew over and landed in front of the stone coffin. He smiled and said, "Uncle Yin, you are safe." "Feiyang, I am sorry. I am really sorry." Yin Nanshan didn't feel happy about being saved. Instead, he felt guilty. Tang Hai looked at the Blood Kirin in the distance and said, "Young master, quickly send Yin Nanshan to the Black Tortoise world." The Blood Kirin wouldn't give up so easily. As a low-level warlord, the Blood Kirin wasn't something that the Grandmaster and the others could compare to. Wait. A fierce battle was unavoidable. Therefore, they had to send Yin Nanshan away immediately. The Black Tortoise world was a safer place than the ancient castle. Qin Feiyang nodded and was about to take Yin Nanshan into the Black Tortoise world. Boom! But suddenly, a terrifying aura erupted from Yin Nanshan's arms. Immediately after, two streams of light shot out from Yin Nanshan's clothes and blasted towards Qin Feiyang and Tang Hai's chests. Boom! The two of them were hit hard and flew out like meteorites. Their chests were caved in, and their flesh was badly mangled. Another ambush? The two of them were shocked. Haha. Do you think that only I came? The Blood Kirin laughed in the distance. Qin Feiyang and Tang Hai steadied themselves and looked up. They saw two ferocious beasts that were a few meters long floating in front of the stone coffin. One of them was as blue as the sea, and the other was as black as ink. They looked exactly the same as the Blood Kirin. Water Kirin. Ink Kirin. Qin Feiyang said each word slowly, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. The demon ancestor had so many godly beasts under his command? The Water Kirin, the Ink Kirin, and the Blood Kirin were all types of Kirins. They had noble bloodlines and extraordinary talents. As long as they didn't die prematurely, they would become the most powerful beings in the world. However, they all submitted to the demon ancestor. How powerful was the demon ancestor when he was at his peak? The Water Kirin and the Ink Kirin in front of them had the aura of a low-level warlord. Although they were weaker than the Blood Kirin, they weren't ordinary godly beasts. They were Kirin godly beasts with noble bloodlines. Their strength could be said to be stronger than any beginner battle god. Yin Nanshan looked at the two godly beasts in front of him, and his face was filled with shock and fear. Obviously, he hadn't noticed before that the Water Kirin and the Ink Kirin were hiding in his clothes. Chua! The Blood Kirin teleported and landed next to the Water Kirin and the Ink Kirin. He laughed and said, "Qin Feiyang, you really are a difficult person to deal with. If it wasn't for my master's foresight, you would have succeeded this time." Demon Ancestor. Qin Feiyang's face was as dark as water. Yes, this was all my master's plan. Seeing that there was no news from Zhuge Mingyang after so long, my master guessed that you might have returned and asked me to come and take a look. Just in case, my master asked me to bring Yin Nanshan and told the Water Kirin and Ink Kirin to shrink their bodies and hide in Yin Nanshan's clothes. At first, I thought that my master's actions were completely unnecessary. With me here, why would he need the Water Kirin and Ink Kirin? I didn't think that they would actually come in handy. The Blood Kirin laughed. The Water Kirin glanced at the Blood Kirin and grunted coldly. "Don't think too highly of yourself." "That's right. If it weren't for us, Yin Nanshan would have been saved. When you go back, you will be punished by my master." The Ink Kirin laughed coldly. Although their cultivation levels were lower than the Blood Kirin's, their status beside the demon ancestor was the same as the Blood Kirin's. However, the Blood Kirin had become a low-level war god before them. Yes. This is my fault. I shouldn't have underestimated this person. In the face of the dissatisfaction and mockery from the Water Kirin and Ink Kirin, the Blood Kirin wasn't angry. He just nodded and smiled. The Water Kirin turned and looked at Qin Feiyang. He asked, "Do you really want Yin Nanshan?" Qin Feiyang looked at Yin Nanshan in the sarcophagus. "Feiyang, you have to listen to me. Don't be led by the nose by these animals. I am not afraid of death. Old Man Run and the others are not afraid of death either. You have to go all out. Only then will you have a chance to kill them and return peace to the Qin Empire. Anyway, don't be afraid because of us. If you do, we won't be happy. We will blame ourselves even more. Do you understand? Yan Nanshan smiled. He looked gratified and proud. Who wouldn't be proud to have such an outstanding descendant? Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. Mobile reading website M. Chapter 1796. Uncle Yen, Qin Feiyang murmured. A strong sense of unease welled up in his heart. When Qin Feiyang didn't answer, Yan Nanshan said angrily, I'm asking you, do you understand? I understand. Qin Feiyang's body shook as he nodded. It's good that you understand. Yan Nanshan laughed again. He then looked at the blood Kirin and the other 2 beasts and roared. Don't even think about using me to threaten Qin Feiyang. Sooner or later, all of you will pay the price for everything you've done. The 3 beasts turned to look at Yan Nanshan in shock. Just as they turned, Yan Nanshan slammed his head into the stone coffin. Clang! Crack! With a deafening sound, Yan Nanshan's head exploded, and he died instantly. Uncle Yen, Qin Feiyang roared, his teeth bared. Looking at the man slowly falling to the ground, 4th Grandpa, Tang Hai, and the others were filled with sorrow. In the distance, when Emperor Hong, the Emperor, and Qin Sheng saw this scene, an unresolvable sadness rose in their hearts. Damn it! The blood Kirin and the other 2 beasts were furious. They hadn't expected Yan Nanshan to be so stubborn as to commit suicide. How much courage did that take? The blood Kirin said angrily. Water Kirin, Ink Kirin, what were you doing? Don't you know how to suppress him? Who was the one who was so cocky? How dare you talk about us? The 2 beasts turned hostile and glared at the blood Kirin. Boom! All of a sudden, a monstrous murderous aura surged out like a huge wave, shrouding the entire area. Huh! The 3 beasts were shocked. They turned to look at Qin Feiyang, and their pupils shrank. At that moment, Qin Feiyang's eyes were blood-red. His body was also surrounded by blood-red flames. That was his murderous aura. Looking at Qin Feiyang's eyes, the blood Kirin and the other 2 beasts felt a chill run down their spines. Their hearts were filled with fear. Go! The blood Kirin roared and brought out a teleport door. Don't even think about going anywhere. All of you stay here. Qin Feiyang smiled savagely. He grabbed the rusty axe and teleported toward the 3 beasts. At the same time as he teleported, he also used the Xing character technique. One could imagine how fast he was right now. Even the blood Kirin, who was a low-level war god, couldn't track him. Before the portal opened, Qin Feiyang appeared in front of the 3 beasts. So fast. The blood Kirin was shocked. This speed was something that even it could not catch up to. No wonder Zhuge Mingyang died in his hands. However, the blood Kirin wasn't Zhuge Mingyang. You're courting death. After the blood Kirin calmed down, it made a decision. It gave the Grandmaster and the castle to the water Kirin and the black Kirin. Then, it swung its claws at Qin Feiyang. The rift collapsed on the spot. The power was not something a low-level war god could compare to. The water Kirin and the black Kirin looked at each other and immediately took the Grandmaster and the black castle away. Don't let them escape, Zhao Tailai roared. Whether it was 4th Grandpa Old Qin, Zhao Tailai, or Tang Hai, they were all angry. But because Yan Nanshan was in the blood Kirin's hands, they didn't dare to make a move. But now, Yan Nanshan had committed suicide, so there was nothing to worry about. Their target was not the blood Kirin either. Qin Feiyang alone was enough to deal with the blood Kirin. After all, the blood Kirin was a low-level war god. If they interfered, they might become a burden to Qin Feiyang. Swoosh! They went straight for the water Kirin and the black Kirin. As for the Hong Emperor, he brought the Emperor and the other 2 and flew towards Yan Nanshan's corpse. He couldn't participate in the battle, because the Emperor and the other 2's ocean of qi had not been repaired yet. He had to protect the 4 of them. Look at Qin Feiyang. Facing the blood Kirin's full attack, he didn't dodge at all. He raised his axe and chopped at the blood Kirin's claw. With a crack, the blood Kirin's claw broke on the spot. This axe! The blood Kirin turned pale with fright. It hadn't recovered, but it was still so sharp. The water Kirin, and the Black Kirin were shocked when they saw the Blood Kirin injured. The Black Kirin said in a deep voice, "Don't worry about it. Let's go." The Water Kirin immediately opened a portal. "Don't run if you have guts." Seeing this, Zhao Tailai shouted, "Do you think we are stupid?" The Water Kirin sneered and entered the portal without looking back. "Don't worry, we will be back soon. Then it will be the end of these people." The Black Kirin glanced at Zhao Tailai and the others coldly, and also rushed into the portal. Damn it, Zhao Tailai roared. Although he, Tang Hai, Old Qin, and Fourth Grandpa were all war gods, the Water Kirin and the Black Kirin were also war gods. And they didn't have a heaven-defying auxiliary magic like the Xing formula. So in terms of speed, they had no advantage. They could only watch the two beasts leave. "Follow me," Old Qin shouted and opened the portal. "Where are we going?" Zhao Tailai was suspicious. "The Sea of Reincarnation." Old Qin's eyes flashed coldly as he stepped into the portal. Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai looked at each other and followed. Fourth Grandpa stood in front of the portal and turned to look at Second Grandpa and Third Grandpa. Second Grandpa and Third Grandpa nodded at Fourth Grandpa. Immediately, Fourth Grandpa also rushed into the portal. So, only Qin Feiyang and the Blood Kirin were left in the sky. "What kind of axe is this? It is so scary." The Blood Kirin looked at the axe in horror. "This axe is going to kill you." Qin Feiyang grinned. There was a murderous look between his eyebrows. He raised the axe and slashed at the Blood Kirin. "You want to kill me? You are still far from that." The Blood Kirin laughed angrily. The Blood Kirin's body flashed, and a blood-red soft armor appeared. Clang! The blade of the axe struck the soft armor, immediately creating dazzling sparks. However, the soft armor wasn't damaged at all. Instead, it was Qin Feiyang who was sent flying. His arm was also numb from the shock. What? When Lu Zheng and Second Grandpa saw this, they were shocked. Even the Blood Kirin's body could not withstand the power of the axe. But now the soft armor had blocked it. What kind of weapon was this? Mid-grade? High-grade? Top-grade? Boy, aside from this axe, what else do you have? The Blood Kirin's eyes were full of disdain. He teleported and appeared behind Qin Feiyang. Then, he used his claws to attack Qin Feiyang's back. Although one of his claws had been broken, he still had 3 claws. Also, the broken claw was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. "I don't have many skills, but I can kill you." Qin Feiyang was furious. His blood-red eyes were full of murderous intent. The purple gold dragon soul roared and activated its talent. "The Emperor Prison? I am a low-level god of war. Do you think you can imprison me?" The Blood Kirin laughed disdainfully. However, when the Emperor Prison fell, the Blood Kirin's mind suddenly went blank. "The Emperor Prison cannot imprison you. But this new ability can even take away the consciousness of a peak god of war, let alone someone like you." Qin Feiyang stepped into the Emperor Prison and shouted, "Go and die with Uncle Yan." Boom! He grabbed the axe with both hands and used all his strength to attack the Blood Kirin's forehead. The Blood Kirin shuddered. Apparently, he had regained his consciousness. After all, the Blood Kirin's cultivation level was higher than Zhuge Mingyang's. The time he could take away his consciousness was shorter. However, for Qin Feiyang, it was enough. Because now, even if the Blood Kirin wanted to dodge, it was too late. Clang! The axe hit the Blood Kirin's forehead. Sparks flew everywhere. Qin Feiyang was sent flying again. The skin between his thumb and forefinger split open and blood flowed out. He looked at the Blood Kirin's soft armor. There was only one mark. It hadn't even cracked. How is that possible? Qin Feiyang looked at the axe in his hand, and then looked at the Blood Kirin's forehead. His eyes were full of disbelief. This time, he had used all his strength, but he still couldn't break the soft armor. Could it be a supreme quality sacred artifact? At the same time, the Blood Kirin looked around. Its red eyes were full of fear. "I didn't expect the Emperor Prison to be so scary. If it wasn't for the Kirin armor, I would have died at your hands." The Blood Kirin looked at Qin Feiyang and laughed. "Kirin armor?" Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. "You don't know yet. The Kirin armor is a supreme quality sacred artifact. In this world, no one can break the defense of the Kirin armor." "No,